Senate.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak to this very important motion, the State of the Nation. Madam Speaker, because we have some time, allow me to begin with sending my sincere condolences to all families that were affected by the loss of their loved ones. Allow me to name, because I'll use my time to name the young people who lost their lives. Madam Speaker, we lost the life of Brian Lemayan Kasaine from Narok, Austin Makoha Nakuru, Mike Kihunga Nakuru, Kelvin Madanga Nakuru, Chris Gitonga Nanyuki, Kennedy Onyango, whose mother's image has not left my mind, from Rongai. We lost Rex Masai from Machakos, Matthew Njoroge, Kevin Mawasi, Bisley Kogi, David Chege, Erickson Kialo Mutisia, Ibrahim Kamau Anjiru, Kennedy Odhiambo Maina, Wilson Sitati, Kennedy Njeru, Eric Kayoni Kieni, Eric Kiratu, Brian Kimathi, Kariton Mwangi, Ernest Kanyi, Caroline Shiramba from Kakamega, Brayo from Kisumu, Mbithi Alaya Scott from Kisumu, Emmanuel Giggs Tata from Mombasa, Joshua Ombati from Mombasa, Clinton Mwavali Kapsabet, Kevin Odhiambo Siaya, Brian Rongo, Bernard Mungai Ndwati, and we have another nearly 10 whose bodies are lying in the mortuary unidentified. Madam Speaker, I believe we have many more whose names had not reached the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. I felt it's important to name them, Madam Speaker, because what has happened in this country is a revolution for the third liberation of this country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Gen Zs are simply trying to get back this country on track. Madam Speaker, I wish people would not speak. People are consulting so loudly that I cannot even hear. Listen to what I'm doing. Madam Speaker, the Gen Zs are telling us a very simple thing, that in 2010, we put in place a constitution to guide how this country should be governed. But this country is not being governed in that manner. And they are telling us that there is a very important provision in the Constitution that we have chosen as a country, particularly the leadership, to ignore. They are bringing us back to the implementation of Article 10 of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, they are bringing back the conscience of this nation. They are telling us that we must go back to what Article 10 says about respect for the rule of law, respect for human rights, governance in a manner that respects equity, equality, and the most important one, that we must now start governing this country applying the principles of transparency and accountability. And Madam Speaker, because a lot has been said, I want us to immediately move on how best we can actually speak to the issue of transparency and accountability. The finance bill was a trigger, and and the President has returned the finance bill to the people of Kenya. Madam Speaker, what we are forgetting, that the finance bill is usually passed to finance an appropriation act that had already been assented to. It is usually passed to speak to budget items that were in the budget policy statement. Madam Speaker, the mistake number one that we do in this country, we do not publicly discuss the budget items and the appropriations that we are put in the Appropriations Act. And the Budget Committee and the National Assembly have failed us because they did not scrutinize budget policy statement, they did not scrutinize the appropriations bill properly to be able to tell the President, some of these things you have put here cannot fly. Madam Speaker, part of those items include the following: confidential budget in DP's office, 800 million. Confidential budget in the President's, in the State House, 1.4 billion. 863 million for hospitality in the Deputy President's office. 400 million for dealing with drugs, and NACADA will be given some more money. 320 million for innovation in the Deputy President's office. 1.5 billion for innovation of state lodges. Meantime, we have 600 billion only for education. 126 billion only for health. Madam Speaker, I can go on. This is a public document. Please go and look at it. Madam Speaker, what the Gen Zs were telling the President is we must go back to the drawing board. We must reorganize the budget items. We must revisit the Appropriations Act which you passed. The President assented to the Appropriations Act, Bill number 34, and today we have a circular from the Treasury guiding all accounting officers to rework their budget so that we can raise the 26 billion that we will not be able to raise in taxes, and in order to rework the budget. Madam Speaker, this is my view, that it is the same cabinet secretary who put this bullshit in this budget. So he cannot be the one to be trusted to do this.
Senator Catherine Muma, that is not
parliamentary
language.
I withdraw.
Withdraw the term bullshit.
Madam Speaker, I think it was agreed we speak with emotion. And I think those items...
Senator Catherine, not with unparliamentary language.
I withdraw. Madam Speaker, what I have just read, and I could read more, is despicable as budget items for this country. And that we are trusting the same person who put it and took it to Parliament to be the one to reorganize is lying to Gen Zs. Madam Speaker, what Gen Zs were telling the President, we need a public participation and a participatory approach to reorganize our budget for the financial year 2024-2025 in order to together come up with a saving. I believe if we look at the budgets at all levels, we will probably save more than the 300 and whatever billion that they wanted to actually raise from the taxes. So the big job that the National Assembly and the Senate should be doing is to do the big job of allowing our experts, whether in civil society, among the Gen Zs, to openly and transparently audit the budget items one by one, for the executive, for parliament, for the judiciary, and put money where it is required. So where we need essential services, we must put money where we need essential services. Where we are wasting money, we must remove that money, because what are we doing? We are working on budgeting for corruption. So number one, Madam Speaker, the President said that he will go and borrow for the deficit. I am recommending that we don't allow one more shilling to be borrowed until we put in place a system that can ensure accountability and transparency with debt. So, Madam Speaker, I'm suggesting not borrowing 1 shilling for the 2024-2025 budget. Madam Speaker, number 2, I am recommending that we rationalize the expenditure. We need to find out how much does hospitality for 863 million look like in one office. We need to clearly agree that is budgeted corruption. It must be moved aside.